can make a bigger.
And welcome back to Casual Revolt. I'm here with my dad, and we are both teachers. Here's my dad. There's his little wave there. All right, so folks, today we're going to be reacting to a PragerU video. Now, PragerU is sort of funded by Dennis Prager, also by donations and stuff. It is sort of right-wing propaganda. I know Donald Trump is trying to replace PBS with PragerU programming, and yeah, I know that. And there are many, especially red states, are sort of integrating PragerU videos into their curriculum. And yeah, so I've already reacted to a few of these videos if you go to my channel, but we're going to now watch the PragerU video on who needs feminism. Okay, so we'll see how this goes. All right. Any comments you want to make, Dad, before we start the video?
None.
Okay, so here we go. This is PragerU, who needs feminism?
I am an anti-feminist. Feminism is a mean-spirited, small-minded, and oppressive philosophy that can
Okay, first of all, I want to point out that I'm not surprised he's a feminist, anti-feminist, I mean, because he's bald. All bald men are anti-feminist. I mean, that's just the way it is. I mean, I'm going to judge him by his bald. I'm bald. By his baldness. I mean, I'm going to put that generality out there because it's true.
Right. I will also say too, the fact here that I think we know what his bias is, right? When he says feminism is mean-spirited, small-minded, and oppressive, when by definition feminism is liberatory. It is meant to be. It's about the equality of the genders in terms of equality underneath the law, equality when it comes to civil rights. Yeah.
And expand on what my son said.
Mm-hmm.
It's liberating for the women.
Mm-hmm.
Some men feel threatened by that because nobody wants to give up their power and their
spitting facts.
Yeah, all that stuff. So somebody else becomes equal. I mean, there's a lot of examples throughout history where that happened. I mean, right here in our own country with the emancipation.
Yeah.
You know, so just want to point that out.
That's a really good point. I also should point out that feminism, there are male feminists, okay? Feminism is also good for men. It is about the equality of the sexes. And there are some things that men in society are not, that, like, for example, it's hard for men to express emotions. Men, if there's a war, they're the ones who are sent off to fight and die. And feminism is about treating both sexes equally, having them equally represented underneath the law and things like that. So it's also good for men. There's a great book. It's called Angry White Men by Michael Kimmel, who's a male feminist. But yeah, it's good for both sexes. But of course, specifically women, especially because, as my dad said, and a lot of men don't want to give up that position. Okay, let's continue.
In relations between the sexes, relations which for most of us provide some of life's deepest pleasures and consolations. Feminism has attempted to bully us all into accepting an obvious lie. The lie that men and women have the same powers, talents, proclivities, and desires.
Okay. What you see this image here, Dad?
Yeah, all the female images are sexualized. It's the image that some men wish that all women had.
Mm-hmm.
Good God.
Yeah. Also, the idea here that he's saying, it's the false idea that women have the same powers, talents, proclivities, and desires. Well, they are humans. I mean, women and men are both humans, and yeah, a lot of women and men have the same talents, proclivities, and desires. I'm not saying that men and women are biologically like the exact same. I'm just saying that there are women who have some of the same desires as men, and men who have the same desires as women, because they are human. Shocking.
And I'm going to get this out of the way right off the top. Science has shown that if you look at the striation marks on the long bones where muscle attachments are, men tend to have longer scarring on the bone where the muscle attachments were, which means bigger muscles. Okay. So what I think is happening here in these pictures, they're equating muscle mass to we are superior because, meaning men, because of the muscle mass. I mean, look how the man is built, all that muscle, and give me a break.
Yeah, and I think you would agree, Dad, that that is like sort of an average. Like, yeah, on average, men have more testosterone, so they can build
Right.
more muscle. But there are, I'm sure my dad would agree with this too. There are women, like women athletes, who could crush me.
Right.
Like, so as in, like, yeah. So you're right. On average, maybe men do have, they do. I mean, that's just biological, but that doesn't mean that it applies to every man or every woman. But yeah, okay, okay.
And consequently, any discrepancy in their professional paths is due to bigotry and must be corrected by force of culture and law. By shoving that lie down our throats, feminism has made both men and women less happy and less free. Now,
What do you think about that, Dad? It's less free, less happy.
No. Our society and the push to give women the same rights as men, um, the same liberties, has actually made this country of ours and other countries like ours, in terms of how they treat the women, a much better place. I don't know how many times you've read about where women are abused, treated like second-class citizens. Yes, and even in countries like ours, some people treat them that way. But the women don't like that. Now, yes, you may find some that believe what he is saying, but a large percent of the women don't like that. I mean, it's almost like, I don't know, if I was a woman, I would have to say that in some cases, some men treat women like they are the overlord over me. I can't make a decision or do things, exercise the gifts that God gave me intellectually, physically, everything else. I can't use them as God saw fit to give them to me, because my overlord says no. Now, I know some people go, well, God didn't do that. I mean, God made women to be barefoot and pregnant. And it's like, wait a minute. There's some, let's look at Mary, Christian, in the Christian faith. She was an extremely brave person to say, yes, I will, if you're into Mary and all that, she said, yes, I will give birth to this baby. She could have been stoned to death, yet she stood up. The very strong Joseph was going to quietly divorce her, because it was like, oh, I don't know if I like that idea. But then it took the urging of God, of an angel, to say, yes, you are going to do this. So the point I'm making is, what in the hell is he saying?
Yeah. Yep. Now he is saying now I'm going to have to speak in generalities, and I understand there are all kinds of exceptions. Well, by the way, folks, if there is an exception to a generality, it disproves the generality. So we'll see if this evolves into a logical fallacy.
Now, I'm going to have to speak in generalities, and I understand there are all kinds of exceptions to what I'm about to say. But the generalities remain generally valid. Feminism denigrates masculinity in men by relentlessly calling us toxic for our flaws, rather than appreciating our natural qualities of energy, risk-taking, and leadership.
Okay.
Whoa.
What do you want to say, Dad? Because I have something to say.
Not all women do that.
Yeah.
There's a lot of women, and I would have to say at this point, now I'm talking in generalities here now, okay? But their generalities are generally right. And the fact of the matter is that there's a lot of women that appreciate the energy, the risk-taking, the leadership that men sometimes exhibit, and when it's a good way of leadership and all that stuff. Without those men, lording it over the women.
Mhm. Well, also at the same time, I know plenty of men who don't have energy, aren't prone to risk taking, and are bad leaders. And I also know lots of women who have lots of energy, are good at risk taking, and are great leaders. I'm sure we could think of historical women in leadership positions who have been fantastic leaders,
Oh,
right?
I gotta say this.
Yeah.
This I have several heroes, being a retired history teacher from history for different reasons, and one of them is Abigail Adams. Um, when her husband John was off in Philadelphia talking about whether they should be, um, gain liberty and break away from England, which was pretty darn risk-taking leadership energy on his part. She was back home taking care of the farm, the kids. She also had organized women to make items for the army. She also wrote letters to John frequently. You could tell the two of them were very much in love. You can actually find a book. There's a book out there that contains some of these letters, and there are times that John was very disappointed, very, very, what I want to say, almost on the point of wanting to give up his energy, his risk taking, his leadership in Philadelphia, because he thought it wasn't going anywhere.
Mhm.
And she would write back saying, John, wait a minute. And she suddenly exhibited the energy, the risk taking, and leadership with her husband, saying, you know what you're doing. You got to do this. So she was the strong one at that point. So you might almost want to say that, well, matter of fact, John did allude to the fact that if it wasn't for Abigail, he's not too sure if this would have gotten done, because
Mhm.
he was tempted just to go home and forget it all.
Yeah. Or even think about like Queen Elizabeth the First of
Oh
England,
my God.
who had plenty of energy, took many risks, and was a fantastic leader. Or we could say Queen Catherine the Great of Russia. A lot of women, by the way, in history have the great after their name, just kind of throwing that out there. Even right now, the president of Mexico, Claudio Sheinbaum, like great leader. I mean, so also a risk taker and has lots of energy. So like Angela Merkel was, I mean, I'm not a big fan of Angela Merkel, but hey, she so again, this is a case by case kind of basis thing, and there are plenty of women who also have energy,
Yep.
take risks, exhibit leadership. Yeah, and by the way, because historically women have been sort of in a secondary role to men in a lot of ways, they haven't really had much of a chance yet to display that because um,
Yeah. And also, too, when it says it's toxic for men, who doesn't long for the good old days? For instance, my daughter, when she got married, I didn't have a say in who her husband would be. Boy, back in the good old days, I probably would have been very instrumental in picking that person for her.
mhm.
Uh, I would have been happy to have her get out of the house, because that'd be one less mouth I have to feed. The fact that she would take on the husband's name, uh, you know, that's the way it was. I'd feel very happy about that. Strong and masculine. Don't you wish for those good old days? And when we go off the war, the women take the jobs that the men, at least in the past, World War I, World War II, they take the jobs of making the weapons that the men are using. That is not,
Yep.
in the view of masculinity, the feminine thing to do. And yet, if it wasn't
Mhm.
for them, would we have won the wars? I mean,
Yeah.
really?
And by the way, there are healthy forms of masculinity, right?
Yes.
Like the notion here that to be masculine, you have to have energy, take risks, and lead. There are other forms of masculinity that are healthy. Okay, they mentioned like he's trying to say that feminists think that all masculinity is toxic. Yeah, maybe some conflate the idea, but we're talking in general, right? There's an understanding that there are toxic forms of masculinity, and then there are perfectly acceptable forms of masculinity. I'm sure a lot of the men watching this know this. They were raised with a non-toxic form of masculinity that was not about the aggression and things like that. Okay. Anyway.
But it also denigrates femininity in women, working to replace most women's commitment to relationship and child-rearing with male obsessions, such as career status and strength. What's the result? Take a look at the quintessential feminist icon, Rosie the Riveter, flexing her muscle.
What?
The truth is, any man of the same size and fitness can make a
Oh,
bigger...
Okay, go ahead.
About out of context.
Mhm.
I had just talked about World War II. When the men went off to World War II, the ones that could go, uh, and volunteered to go and were drafted to go, they were leaving jobs that were important to our country, all across our country. They turned to the women. There was this idea back then of the feminist ideal of women, okay? And taking these jobs, especially in factories, thus Rosie the Riveter, was not something a woman should do. It was, you don't do that to be feminine. But in order to give due and to inspire women to take these jobs and for men to accept it, they came up with this iconic image of Rosie the Riveter. Look, she's pulling her weight. Yes, she's a woman, but she is part of the backbone of the U.S. that is building the weapons, keeping our society running over here so the men could go off and fight. That is what Rosie the Riveter is about. It wasn't taking on men. It was trying to survive the fascists.
Mhm.
They wanted
Absolutely.
to take over the world.
Yeah, exactly. And by the way, this is an oversimplification, but one of the reasons the Nazis actually lost the war is because they viewed women as only baby making machines and weren't really willing to let them go into factories as much as we did in
Right.
America. Yeah, and by the way, just to prove the point here that women can do a lot of men's jobs. They did great in the factories, okay, and it inspired a lot of them after the war to start,
Right.
pushing for more freedoms and stuff. So, I mean, yeah, again, these generalizing about the sexes or whatever is missing the point.
Yeah, and a part of this too is that after the war, a lot of the women were going, I like this job.
Hmm.
You asked me to do this job. I did it. I can do it. You thanked me for it. You were happy I did it. I want to continue on with this. All of a sudden, there were some men who are not happy with that. Well, that's a little different. Not. Come on.
Right. Okay, here we go. I also love this other image here of they're having this man and this woman like arm wrestle. Okay, any man of the same size and fitness can make a bigger. Okay, here we go.
stronger muscle than Rosie can, by herding women away from their
But again, how is that relevant to working in a factory? Because you don't need that for the kind of work they were doing. Okay, I mean, it's not like all right.
feminine
Anyway,
And
natures.
yeah.
I do want to throw something in here in that, I'm a retired history teacher. One of the history teachers in my department, I happen to be the head of the department, which doesn't mean much actually. He was a football coach. Now, before you go, oh, football coach, history teacher, oh, great. He was very, 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 very good at what he did, at both coach and at teaching in social studies. He worked out. He had muscles coming out the wazoo compared to me. Does that make him a better teacher than me? Does that make him more capable than me? Well, out on the football field, maybe. But, no, come on. This is
Right.
such a backwards
Yeah.
idea. This
And
these days.
do you also notice that there might be some sort of like transphobia going on in this video too? This like emphasis on men are men, women are women.
Right.
Like, I don't know, just something else I've noticed.
Feminism seeks to transform them from first-rate women into second-rate men. Now, perhaps you'll protest. Isn't feminism simply the idea that women have the same human rights as men? No,
Yes,
it isn't.
yes, it is. Yes, it is. Feminism is the idea that women should have the same human rights as men. Okay. Now there are different strains of feminism historically. There are more radical versions of feminism, but the through line of feminism is that women should have the same rights as men. Okay.
And okay, for those of you who are Christians out there, that have this warped Christian view of women's role in society, as you know, there are two versions in Genesis of the creation of the world by God. In one of them, It is said that God created man and woman together. Together, he created them in his image and likeness. Now, it didn't say that he created Adam and then he created Eve to be his servant. No, together in his image, he created them. So to say that there isn't, no, it isn't, as he's saying here, well, if, once again, you are a Christian and believe everything you read in the Bible, you're going against what God says here in how he created human beings. So that alone is
Yeah. Though I will say, I know my dad's a Christian, as we've talked about before. I am not. I'm an atheist. So I'm going to add, Dad, that for the atheists out there, the first version of the story is misogynistic.
yes, it is.
The idea of Eve coming from the rib of Adam.
Mhm.
So, I mean, I guess you could pick and choose which one. There's also other parts of the Bible that are pretty misogynistic.
Right.
Um,
That
yeah,
now we're getting into, how accurate is the Bible, the Word of God, because if there are two different stories. Now,
which is why I would argue it's not the word of God. But hey, I
yeah,
know that we won't get into that
but that's
argument.
why I say I'm addressing this to Christian.
Yeah. Okay, but I know that's something we could debate. But okay, let's go on.
That philosophy is called classical liberalism, which holds that we are all equally endowed by God with the inalienable rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But wait, doesn't the Declaration of Independence say that all men are created equal? Yes.
Yeah.
Classical liberalism was an idea conceived by and largely for Christian white men. But, like all ideas, good and bad, classical liberalism has evolved over time according.
By the way, folks, I think my dad would agree with me. It wasn't even for all men at the time. It was for propertied men.
Yes.
They unpropertied men couldn't vote, but definitely not for women. That's for sure. And
not for slaves.
not for
They'd
slaves.
be unpropertied also. But
Yeah, I know what you mean. Not for slaves, not for Native Americans. Okay. Now he is right. I guess I gotta kind of weirdly hand him that over time it evolved. But yeah.
Now, Thomas Jefferson, for those of you who don't know your history, who wrote the Declaration of Independence, he was a part of the Enlightenment, and he was an enlightened writer. And the Enlightenment is a part of our human history in which people start thinking on their own and start to question the powers to be. Um, it helped usher in the scientific revolution, a bunch of other stuff.
Mm.
But Jefferson read other enlightened writers. And one of them, whose name I have forgotten because it's been several years since I've been in the classroom, but he wrote in there in his one of the enlightened writers that Jefferson liked. He basically said in this other enlightened writer, and I want to say he was from England, about, yes, there might be, people, practice Islam, people that practice Christianity. There are people from different countries, but they all have the same given rights.
Mm-hmm. Is it John Locke, Dad? The idea that,
I think there was another one that actually expounded upon it more.
Fair.
And Jefferson viewed him as one of his favorite writers. So if you extrapolate that out, I don't think Jefferson meant just men. Now, we're assuming something here, but that's where I hold it.
It is possible. You're right. There's some historians who do believe, because the phrase "man" at the time could also mean mankind, like humankind and things like that. I guess what I should say, and I'm sure my dad would agree with this too, that in practice, though, it did only mean men, even if the intention of the original word was all humans.
Right.
Women weren't, yeah, but that's a good point, though, because there are a lot of historians who say that the word man in the Declaration does, in fact, mean humankind. Yeah. Okay.
According to its internal logic, so it now includes all races and both sexes. Good job, Christian white men. Thanks for the great idea.
I'm sorry, Dad, do you see the joy in which he said that phrase? And look at that happiness. Right. Christian white men smile, happy, and joy. That's kind of strange to me.
Yep.
As its excuse for the damage it does to our lives, feminism has developed the historical mythology that men have oppressed women and now must be suppressed in their turn to even things out.
Okay.
That is not. Go ahead, Dad.
Okay, I'm going to say, first of all, not all women want to oppress men. Okay,
Yeah. Well, not all feminists. I mean, like, yeah.
not all feminists want to
Not-
oppress men. I mean, but a lot of them, all they want is
Equality.
rights and liberties and the ability to use their God-given abilities,
Their choice.
their
Yeah.
choice,
They have a
to
choice.
use it, to give a choice here,
Hmm.
and that and to be honest, in the past, men did usually, with some exceptions, usually had the last say.
Hmm.
I mean, there are some societies, and relatively recently, we'll say within the past 300 years even, that woman could not divorce the husband, but the husband could divorce the man.
Hmm.
Those laws had to be changed. Now, are you saying that, oh, that made things worse? If the woman's being beaten, yeah, she should have stayed in that marriage because at least she could stay, barefoot and pregnant
Awful.
and
Yeah.
subservient to the man. I mean,
Hmm.
God. And that's why sometimes men beat their wives. Oh, they deserved it. She got out of hand.
That's insane.
What?
Yeah. No, that's absolutely insane. Yeah. Yeah. um, yeah.
He proposed a different narrative that has the advantage of possibly being true. Insofar as men and women are physical creations,
Oh,
Look at that. Look at that, Dad.
okay, guys, look at how they show the men here. Then look at this woman from back in time. Once again, sexualizing the
Yeah.
female form. Do you really think that if you go back to the Neolithic or Paleolithic era, Old
Yeah.
Stone Age and New Stone Age, the women really look like that in terms of how they dress, their waistline, and oh look, I'm hot.
Yeah. But yeah,
Come
she also. You're
on.
right, Dan. She also has lipstick on, and it looks
Yep.
like her hair is in a perm. Like what?
And
What?
the men are almost barbaric looking,
Yeah,
wild.
yeah. And
Oh,
by the way, folks, during the Paleolithic era, men and women would hunt. I
yep.
mean, you cannot if you're taking down a mammoth, you need everyone you need everyone you can to
Yep.
help take down the mammoth. So like, yeah, this is okay.
their central purpose is the production of more human beings. Women are therefore fashioned in body and mind to make and nurture children, and men to protect and support those children during their relatively long.
Here's one thing, biologically, that's the purpose of the sex organs.
Yes.
Biologically is to perpetuate the species. Okay.
Mhm.
I'm not going to argue that. You can't argue what nature did here. Okay.
Mhm.
However, what I am going to argue about is that while there is definite evidence when it comes to that, men were made to protect the family. You might say, yeah, those massive muscles were actually meant for that. I could also say those massive muscles were to be used in the future in WWE championship fights too to gain people. I mean, now we're trying to do things with this information.
Yeah, and not all men have massive muscles.
No, they
Same.
don't,
I
and
mean,
even back then they didn't. And
yeah.
there were women who actually did defend. I mean, let's look at the Norse.
Shield
Uh,
maidens.
yeah,
Mhm.
and they, in some cases, when the men would go off to raid these big, powerful men who never wore helmets that had horns on them. That's not true, but anyway, the women were left behind, and they protected the elderly, the children from attack. And there were examples where neighboring Norse villages saw the men go off from another village that they were in competition with, and they would go and try to capture the women and either capture and kill them or just capture them and make them a part of theirs, and I'm not going to tell you what the men also did to the women. But hey, that's a part of general nature. Okay.
Yeah, that's what the
I'm,
people in this video would
I'm
think.
sarcastic. I want to point that
Yes.
out. And the women actually fought back. There are several examples where the women actually defended their village from these marauding men
Mhm.
quite well, and won out. So
Yeah.
to say that there are two completely different purposes between the sexes. If they were around today, say that to a Norse, or as people today call them, Viking. Um, woman.
Yeah, and if anyone is curious, look up the Trun sisters from Vietnam. They resisted the Chinese Empire by going into battle. They were basically a pair of sisters, and they rode into battle on the back of an elephant and crushed the Chinese. Like so, yeah. This is you don't necessarily need. Yeah. Anyway, um,
Maturation period. All societies shape themselves around these necessities. They created
historically, not necessarily true. Anthropologically, there have been societies in the past that are they're rare that are matriarchal, where women have more power over
Yep.
society, but they're very rare, but they do exist. So not every society does this.
Well, a couple things that I do want to mention, and one is that whole patriarchal society thing. I don't know if anybody out there is the familiar with the Iroquois Confederation
Hmm.
that lived along the Great Lakes in New York and down into Pennsylvania. There were 6 nations, Iroquois uh, groups of people. Um, and they would come together and have councils to figure out what they're going to do in cases of emergency. I mean, we're talking, although they were part of the Iroquois nation, you had, for instance, the Mohawk, the Cayuga,
Oneida.
Oneida, Onondaga people. They would come together, and their hierarchy, the men that would come together to make these decisions for the entire 6 nations, another name for them, the people who chose them were the women.
Yeah.
The women were the ones that had a huge say in
Hmm.
what the men wanted to do.
Yeah. So this is simply not true. What they're saying that that it has happened everywhere in history. No, they're
Nope.
ask any anthropologist. Okay.
structures that formalized gender roles and attempted to ensure the paternity of children so that men would care for their own.
Another sexualized woman here, by the
Yes,
way.
and here's one of the other things I guess I was thinking about saying is that, and quite often back then, these communities were, just as they say, communities, communal,
Hmm.
and that,
It takes a village.
yeah, it takes the whole idea of takes a village, and that's an African saying there, to raise a child.
Hmm.
But it wasn't just the mother who did it, it was the village. If the
Yeah.
mother had to go do something, let's say in the farm field, and couldn't take her child with her, the community would be there to take care of that child. If something happened to the mother, the community would take care of that child.
Yeah.
So it isn't just a one-on-one thing, and everybody else said, "Oh, not my kid."
Yeah. Yep. So.
In many societies, these structures became increasingly ritualistic and oppressive for women. But the opposite happened in the Christian West. Why? Take a look at your Bible, Proverbs 31.
Okay, again, okay, so first of all, yeah, I suppose way in the future, like in many societies, there have been more rights for women. In most societies, I guess, and maybe not all of them, there have been more rights for women. That doesn't mean that the Christian West was not oppressive towards women. And again, if we're going to cherry pick the Bible, I'm sure there are other parts of the Bible that are very misogynistic. So,
Oh, very.
yeah. So again, I don't know what he's going to say here, Dad, but okay.
The biblical ideal of a good woman is not only strong, kind, and wise, she's also a creative and economic dynamo. Christianity sanctified motherhood in the person of Mary and celebrated women's fortitude and virtue in the female saints. The church created a version of marriage intended to protect women and designed the philosophy of chivalry.
Okay, let's go back to Mary. Do you know, when it comes to Mary, there's 2 different ways to view what she did. Brave, courageous woman who put her life on the line when it comes to being stoned to death for being pregnant. Um, she was brave and courageous. Okay. Um, that's one view. The other view is, and this is one that you tend to hear a lot more on, she was submissive to God's will. And by the way, God is usually
Gross.
um, usually depicted as a man, although if you go back to a very long time ago, ancient Hebrew, the God's name was, well, there was, he was depicted sometimes as a man, but also sometimes as, well, God is neither male or female. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
But but that idea that Mary was submissive to God reinforced it because women's not, being subjugated. Because in the Middle Ages, especially when you get to the nobility were looked at as being spokespeople for God.
Hmm.
Therefore, my wife must obey me. That's a reality. In the peasantry, you might find it a little bit more
Fluid.
women.
You say it again, Dad?
I said amongst the peasantry, the women may have had a little bit more freedom
Yes.
because they had to survive, and the
Yeah.
men, allowed them in many cases to do that.
Hmm.
And then when it comes to this idea of the church, sanctifying marriage, they actually could give a rat's ass early on
Yeah.
about 90% of the population of Europe, basically the peasants. They
Hmm.
didn't care.
Yeah.
They cared about the nobility because that came down to land ownership.
Yeah. And so, if I may, Dad, to interrupt you, he said that early marriage was an attempt to ensure men could protect women. It was not. It was about property.
That's what I'm getting to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Sorry. Yeah.
And so, because sometimes, women in noble birth brought property to the marriage, and the people who would inherit that would be the sons, usually not the women. Uh, the women got it because dad gave them some property to give to the. Now there were exceptions to the rule, like Queen Elizabeth I, but the church got involved because it started to be arguments among some of these nobilities, especially the monarchs, as to who should get the property. And so it is, the church decided first and foremost early on that because the church was the law of the land, that was the supreme power. After all, the Pope represented God on earth. And I don't mean I am God on earth, it's I represent God. And therefore, everything I say is from God. And therefore, it was like, we've got to be witnesses to these marriages. We keep the laws, we keep the records. Therefore, we want to keep on record that one of our clergy was there, presided over this marriage in order to solve any future problems of property division.
Hmm.
Okay. And that's where it was. What happened to the peasants? Well, the church for quite a long time really could care less.
Okay. All right. Shall we continue?
Mm-hmm.
which instructed men to use their superior strength for women, not against them. Individuals can be incredibly abusive to one another, men and women both. But over time, Christendom tended to elevate, protect, and ultimately include women as women in the great enterprise of Western civilization.
I just think the phrasing there is interesting. Like I said, I think that there might be some transphobia here. I just generally how they phrase things. Elevate, protect, and ultimately include women as women. What is yeah, women are women. What do you mean? Like I don't understand. He's just yeah, and also just the framing here of the great enterprise of Western civilization, we can kind of see he has a bias.
Right. And I also want to mention too about this whole idea. Going back to what I'm saying, there are numerous times in the Middle Ages and in the Renaissance, in the early days of colonial discovery, in which women actually were the rulers.
Yeah.
And when the men went off to war, who was left behind to take care of the castles, the fiefdoms, the kingdoms, make sure food was being produced, make sure defenses were strong enough. So, in case while the men were out fighting, most of the army, what she had left uh, would be protected. It was usually the wife. So, she took over the duties. So, it wasn't like she couldn't do it. Okay. They were expected to do it.
Now, the developments of modernity have created special challenges for women. Industry removed clothing and food production from the home to the factory, and thus deprived homemakers of their traditional businesses. Children lost their monetary value to parents by leaving home to fend for themselves.
Okay.
So,
I want to point out here, do you know studies have shown that there are more businesses owned by women today than any time before in our history in the United States?
Yep, and you notice how he framed it though, Dad? He's like, modernity has brought challenges for women. Yeah, okay,
Yes.
yeah, they own their own businesses. They have more freedom.
More than any other time. So,
Yeah.
gee, many
Yes, but
Christmas.
to him, that's a challenge, right? Because he wants women in the home.
Right.
All right. Pretty gross. And okay, yeah.
While motherhood and homemaking remain the most important spiritual activities of humankind,
For who? There are multiple religions in the world. So spiritual activities, what does that mean? I don't know. That's just bizarre.
You can't be spiritual and as a woman and work outside of the home.
Yeah.
Excuse me. You ever hear Joan of Arc?
Yeah, she wasn't exactly a mother or a
She wasn't a
working
homemaker. She wasn't there barefoot and pregnant.
Mhm.
And yet she was a very, very spiritual person. Now, I'm not going to get into the idea would
Yeah,
God
yeah.
have led her to kill a lot of people, but
Mhm.
she's depicted as an extremely spiritual person who broke the norm.
Yeah.
And by the way, that's one of the reasons why she was executed by the English.
Witch.
She was, yeah, they called her a witch because she was a woman doing
Yeah.
all this stuff. Women can't do
This
that.
woman is speaking up. She's a witch, like
There
that.
you
Yeah,
go.
classic
Yes.
or misogynistic nonsense. Okay, here we go.
Okay.
modernity has stripped those enterprises of their former economic power. But in a Western civilization dedicated to equal rights, these challenges come along with fresh opportunities. New technologies and effective birth control allow individual women to tailor gender roles to their personal liking or abandon them altogether. None of this.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good thing. Yeah, I agree with him there. Yeah, we're giving women control over their bodies, increases their ability to make decisions for themselves, allow them to decide if they want to be a homemaker, not be a homemaker, be single, not be single, which is good.
Right.
Which is good.
And if you have two people up for a job, let's say the CEO of a company or a president of the company, one's a woman, one's a man, and the woman has a past in where she has outshined what the man has done. She shows she has more abilities than the man. Not that the man is stupid or anything, they aren't. But it's just like anything. You hire the best person possible.
And so that's a really good point because that's just more efficient, right? Don't we want the best people in positions of power and stuff? Sometimes that's a woman, sometimes it's a man.
Right.
I mean,
and if you want to be a man and hurt by, they just hired her because there's a woman, it's like, come on, grow up, take off your diapers, put on your big boy pants and go, yeah, that can happen.
Yep.
Is a reason to attack men. In fact, these new opportunities are largely the result.
I think he was hurt when he was in high school or something. I feel like a woman may have
his ass.
Yeah, there's that too. Or maybe refused him. He had a crush and they didn't like him back, and now he just really doesn't like women. And he's like, "This is no reason to attack men." Okay, well, who's attacking men? That we're just saying that women should be treated equally. Yeah.
Result of men's inventions and their ideas. And none of it required.
Well, okay, that is funny. Yeah. Anyone ever heard of Marie Curie? Mary Wollstonecraft. There have been plenty of women geniuses in history. What was the name of that one woman? Watson and Crick, who are said to have figured out the structure for DNA. Rosalind Franklin.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes. She was the one who actually did it, but then they kind of stole the credit. Men have invented a lot of things because they're human, and humans can do that, and so can women. They've invented lots of cool things. And
in this case, I'm going to throw in there, the way he's saying it, it's like women invented the idea that we are created equal,
right?
And that's not good. And whereas, men. We are the creators. And, that goes back to the old biblical, and that lasted clear up till a couple hundred years ago. And I'm being honest here. We rarely hear this, but it was a huge issue. Men were considered the creators when it came to procreation. Okay, women were just considered the fertile ground from which this new human being would grow.
Think of the language like planting his seed, things like that.
And women are fertile or infertile. Those are foreign terms. And the understanding of the people way back then, before they knew about sperm and eggs, is that it was figured that the man's sperm were actually tiny little babies. And when they had sex with the woman, they put that little seed baby, into the woman's fertile farmland, you might say. She's fertile. And then what would happen is out of this would come a child. Now, if the child was male, that's what it should have been, because his seeds are male. I mean, you don't plant a radish and come up with a pumpkin. Okay, you plant a male seed, it comes out male. Great. But if a girl is born, then something was wrong, not with the seed, but with the farm field. They didn't get, the typical thing of farming,
Yeah.
not enough water, not enough sun.
So the
not
woman
enough
would
rain.
always be blamed if
Yeah,
there
the
was an
woman would
issue.
be blamed, and because it's female, there's something wrong there. And
Mhm.
that fed in a lot to the men are the creators. It also fed in a lot to the fact that, you know, that women really are blamed for a lot of things.
Yeah,
And
that
second-class citizens.
infertility is always
Yeah.
is always
The
the woman's fault.
creator is always up here. I mean, after all, within a lot of theologies and faiths, the creator is the one powerful or the group of powerful gods. Um, so there you go. And that really was a part of the issue.
Yeah.
Why do you think Henry VIII, or what did he use to try to divorce some of his wives, the ones that gave birth into some cases, a girl, was well, she didn't do her job, so I'm going to have a baby by somebody else.
Hmm.
And that was typical. Okay, I'm
All right.
sorry. I'll calm down.
Here we go.
There's women to abandon the femininity, which is one of the graces of our world. It's
Also, I just don't give a shit. Like, I don't care if a woman wants to express her femininity, if she wants to not be feminine. Like, who cares? Who cares? Women can choose what they want. They don't have to be feminine. They're human beings. They can do what they want. Who cares? Like, the obsession with like women have to be feminine. Who cares? Who cares?
And also, too, when women sometimes do want to express their femininity, um, the men view it as either, oh, golly, she shouldn't do that. What is she thinking? Do you know she's setting herself up for some man to do something bad to her?
Yeah.
Suddenly becomes her fault.
Right.
Not the guy to control himself.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
The creator should control himself.
Yeah, all that nonsense, like, well, what was she wearing?
Yeah.
Like all that blaming the victims shit,
Right.
which is just so frustrating.
And and men have set up a lot of rules and regulations on how far women can go with their femininity.
Mhm. Yeah.
One time you better not show your ankles because that
Mhm.
would be a sin. Another time you better not show anything above the knees because that was wrong. It would set men off. And this
Mhm.
happened. Women have had to tread a fine line. A man can wear a Speedo or a thong out onto the beach. And although people may go, oh my golly, he shouldn't do that. The fact is, he can.
Yeah, and who cares? Like I just don't like. Who cares? People can do what they want.
Women have to protect themselves
Yeah.
from men
Yeah, which is bizarre. Like
who refuse to control or
right.
to.
And by the way, that idea is also bad for men. Like that it is assuming that somehow men are just animals that can't control themselves,
Yeah.
which is not
Oh,
true. Right? Yeah. So why are we putting the blame on women for the actions of some men? So anyway, okay.
change and progress, that's all. With honest thought and goodwill, we can adapt over time without the angry, bitter, and dishonest attacks on our human nature by
Yeah, he's
feminists.
been hurt. He's been
I'm
hurt.
Andrew Clavin for Prager University.
Yeah. I
Right.
don't feel like I've been attacked or anything. And when a woman has spoken up, and not necessarily to me, because I try to be a good guy,
Mhm.
but I quite often have to go. I can understand why that woman grew up that way. I can understand why that woman is espousing that. It's just like a guy. I can understand why that guy is acting that way because he was abused when he was younger.
Yeah.
Or a woman. She was abused when she was a girl,
Yeah.
or I could go on and on and on. I don't look at it as, oh, they're just bitter because they want stuff that we want as men that were God-given and natural to
Yeah.
us.
Yeah.
That's not the issue.
And it reveals deep insecurity, in my opinion. When a
Yes.
man is that way, it's like, okay, brother, I understand you must have something going on, but this is not the fault of women, okay?
Yep.
All right. So any last words here, Dad? This is the end of it.
Thank God I wish it was the end of it.
I know, right? So last few notes here, folks. First of all, if you like what we do here, you can click the join button beneath the video, and for as little as 99 cents a month, you can help support my dad and I on here on the channel. You can also join on Patreon for as little as $5 a month. You can get access to exclusive content as well as regular updates about what I'm doing with the channel and help me grow it, help me upgrade my junk here, my equipment and such. I know, Dad. I shouldn't have said my
Sorry.
junk. I know you're right.
Clean up my mind here.
Right. Okay. I get it. I got you. Okay. Please click the subscribe button if you're not subscribed to our channel already. And on a final note here, as I always do at the end of my videos, folks, please never stop resisting. The easiest way you can resist is to think for yourselves. The easiest way you can resist is to think for yourselves. And that includes when you watch us, right? We can get things wrong. We're human. The easiest way you can resist is to think for yourselves. Yes, Dad, you wanted to say something.
Yeah, and I've started saying this, not to tread on anything Sam said, what my son said, because it's true what he said. But as I always told my students, don't stop learning. Things change.
Yes.
Things change. New things come up. New discoveries come up. And if you think what you learned is all you needed when you got that grade school or high school or college diploma, you're wrong.
Yeah.
There's more. Expand your mind.
Yeah.
Don't do self-surgery on it and remove those parts that resists.
Yeah. And on that note, folks, I will say in this video, they talk about men and women. There's also trans men, trans women. There's non-binary people. This is so anyway, that's something that they didn't even talk about in the video. Gay people, straight people. Okay. Anyway. So the easiest way you can resist is to think for yourselves. We are living in a fascist moment in this country and also around the world. Fascism comes about when a society loses faith in their democratic institutions because people are no longer getting what they need. How to fix that is that we need major reforms in this country. We need major reforms to get people faith in their democracy again. We need major reforms. You cannot stand in the center. If you stand in the center, the fascists will walk all over you. Yes, Dad.
Oh, nothing. Just kind of doing things. I wanted to give him rabbit ears, but I thought while you're talking seriously, I didn't really want to do that.
Okay. All right. Okay, folks. So thank you. On that note, we're going to head off here, and we'll post more videos soon. By the way, hit the bell icon if you want to be notified when I go live. I do live streams. We have a Discord on there with a pretty fast growing community. All right. Have a good day, everyone. Bye-bye. Bye.